Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I wanted to talk about something a little bit different. I wanted to talk about role locking in Overwatch, what it could do that works, what it could do that might not work, so on and so forth. So to start, of course, if you don't know what role locking is, or what the idea of role locking is, so as you know, currently in Overwatch, there is no locked-in team composition in terms of the number of types of heroes, right? The current meta, at least the Overwatch League Stage 1 meta, the Overwatch World Cup meta, etc., was GOATs, triple tank, triple support. Very few of the compositions ever featured a DPS hero. If they did, it was Sombra. And sometimes you'd have some, Pharah compositions and McCree compositions, but for the most part, it was all triple tank, triple support. So this kind of, composition of GOATs has brought about a very big discussion in the community about if Overwatch should implement a role lock, which means that the game would lock itself, right? Every single game you played would be a very specific composition, right? And you could pick heroes to go into this composition, but it would always be 2 DPS, 2 tanks, and 2 supports every single game, right? And it's a very interesting idea, one that I've been very back and forth on whether or not I like it. So I want to start with some of the things that I think you would have to really do if you did this, right? The biggest thing I think is if you do role locking, you have to add a role queue system as well. You can't have role locking and not have a role queue. And the reason why I say this, one, it makes competitive a little bit easier, right? It makes this whole MMR system work better, where you can have, competitive on different roles, which is something Jeff Kaplan has talked about, the fact that he wants to do that. So if you're a tank player, right, and you want to play tanks, then you're probably better than if you are now playing support. So you're, say, a 3800 tank player, but you're like a 2900 support player. But you're a support player still playing 3800 when that's not really where it should be playing. So if you separate each role to different MMRs, you can play that role at the level that you need to play it at, and it helps you improve, but it also helps to keep all the roles separate, and it keeps players on the roles that they want to play, right? Because you also, I think, need to add a role queue if you do role lock, because I can already see issues where if you just join a game and then it's a scramble to click the the hero or the role that you want most. Because what I can see already in my mind is DPS player, right, or anyone just wants to play a DPS, right? New DPS hero drops, which is where I also think it would be problematic every time there's a new hero drop, but we'll get to that. But you want to play a DPS hero just because you're like, I want to play Pharah today. So you go to join the game, and there's no role queue. You just join the game. Everyone is going to go to try to play a DPS hero, right? And what's going to happen is people are going to try to click DPS, 2 people will get it, and then everyone else who wanted to play DPS that doesn't get it is probably going to leave, right? It happens already anyway, right? People leave games all the time, so you're going to have people who leave, games aren't going to work very well. So I feel like you cannot do role locking without role queue, because I can already see all of those problems happening, right? It's a very, very, very fine line between a working system and a not working system. And I think that you have to do it correctly to get it to work. And like I said before, with new heroes, right? If a new hero were to drop, right? We just had Baptiste, of course. If Baptiste was implemented in a role lock era, there would be a lot of people who would be queuing up to try to play support, which would then increase the wait time for support. Jeff Kaplan, in an interview with Styloso, was talking about this, and he's talking about the queue times for the different roles, and he said, like, if we were to do a role queue, wait times, he said wait times are on average about 5 minutes, right? If we were to add a role queue, some of those wait times would be insane. Tanks, he said, would be pretty much unaffected, right? Because not a lot of people play tank. Supports would be a little bit higher. I think he said like 8 minutes or so, something like that. But DPS would be like 25 minutes. Because everybody plays DPS, right? So you're looking at a system that if you don't do it correctly, right, you have so many issues. And it's my biggest reason why I'm against role queuing, is because I feel like role queuing will create more people who leave, or not against role queuing, against role locking and role queuing, I guess. I think it creates leavers because people don't get to hear they want, like, okay, well then I'm leaving because there's no reason to stay. You have the issue of queue times being increased for every hero type, which is never really a fun time. And I feel like you have to find a way to improve it because it just doesn't work in some of the ways that I think people would envision it to work. I would really hate to join a game, and I'm like, I want to play support heroes, right? And the 2 DPS are auto-locked, right? I'm playing a support, we have 2 tanks, and people keep joining the game, wanting to play DPS, and then they don't get it and they leave, and they keep leaving. So it's like 6v5 the whole game, because we never have people playing support, or we just don't have enough people playing support, and I'm trying to solo heal a team of people who are just not grouping up together and diving in and whatnot, and it's something that I can already see, people, that happens already, right? But I can imagine it being so much worse, and I can imagine the game being a lot more frustrating in a role locking environment. But I also think there's a lot of benefits to role lock that I think make it potentially something that should happen. My thing is, I don't know if role locking if they do implement it, I don't know if it should be a purely purely competitive thing, or if they should also put it in quick play. Because obviously quick play is meant to be like comp light, or casual competitive, it's just the casual part of the game. But I feel like if you're in quick play, you should just be able to play the hero that you want to play. Obviously, if you really just want to play the hero you want to play, that's when you do no limits. But I feel like, who cares if, you join quick play and you have a team of 5 DPS, and if that's just what you want to do. But I also feel like you can't do that if you have role locking, because then you just kind of have an issue of, I want to learn or I want to practice this strategy. Obviously in quick play you don't get as much of an idea, but you're like, I want to see if this composition works, whatnot, stuff like that. You take it into quick play. It's a very interesting kind of idea to look at. But the thing with role locking that I think would be incredibly helpful for the game is, right now, of course, we're in the GOATS meta, right? We've been in the GOATS meta for a very, very, very long time. It's been about a year. Not exactly a year. Obviously, the Overwatch League itself didn't really have GOATS until this season. We didn't really see GOATS in Stage 4 of last season or in the playoffs, but we saw some tank-heavy metas emerging. And then, of course, in the Overwatch World Cup, we really saw GOATS show up. And then, of course, it's been in the Overwatch League. So, it is definitely something that I would like to move past, but it's something that's difficult to move past because the problem with a game like Overwatch now and balancing a game like Overwatch now is your goal is to make heroes viable, right? But you don't want heroes to be viable for every single occasion. You want heroes to be essentially the idea of the Overwatch team is that they want every hero to be a niche pick, right? They want certain strategies to develop around, certain heroes working together, right? And the problem currently is there's always a good reason to run goats in the current meta because it's just that good. So that's what they've been trying to address. But you can't really hurt goats when you have no other metas being really played. But if you were to, do something to Lucio, for example, right, super serious, well, then you make Lucio unviable across the board, right? Or if your idea is, well, let's buff another hero so that this hero kind of stops goats, hurts goats, counters goats. Well, what if you doing that, right? Maybe it kind of counters goats, but what if then it's so overpowered in any other composition that it just, especially on the low ladder, that it just doesn't make any sense, right? If you do role locking, balancing the game becomes significantly easier because you only have to worry about, okay, every hero will be playing in a 2-2-2 composition, and that allows for the game to run better. That allows for all the heroes to have a better understanding of what they are. Now, I think what this would require is, of course, a massive, massive, massive balance change right off the bat to try to bring heroes more in line to where they need to be. Because, for example, right, a hero like Brig is currently one of the most broken or hated fan hero. I personally don't share that opinion with the rest of the community, but Brig is a very unpopular hero because she has the ability to stun people. Obviously, her stun is weakened, but it's the fact that it's a stun, and a stun is a very good ability. And Brig is in a position now where she works so well in goats, and she's successful in goats because she has a very poor healing output that's consistent, right? She has her repair pack, which is a good burst heal, which is helpful for keeping things up, but it's not consistent healing because you have to be close range when you get her Inspire up, and her Inspire healing isn't the greatest. It's not bad, but it's not the greatest. But because of the fact that Goats is a very, close together type composition, where, you have Reinhardt swinging at each other and Zarya's up close doing their damage and whatnot, Brigitte's able to thrive because she can do the healing that she needs to do to help out because the rest of her team is fighting right up with the other team. But in any other real composition, Brigitte's not that good, right? She's pretty much dead when you pick her in a 2-2-2 comp because she is not a good enough healer to really be a secondary healer. But you can't really up her healing and make her a better secondary healer currently, up her healing output, because if you up her healing output, then Goats never dies. So you have to really work around that balance. So right now, Brig is a hero that you can't do anything to make her no longer as powerful as she is, as good as she is, because if you lower her damage, then whatever, like, that's not why she's good. She's good because of her healing output. She's good because of her shield bash. So you could take away her shield bash, but that just, why even bother? I think there's things you can do, of course, to weaken Brig, but that's for a whole other video. But the idea is, right, if you have it so it's always 2-2-2, Brig becomes a much easier hero to balance, to get her more into a position you need her to be, because you can up her healing output, you can make her a better healer, right, at that point in time. You don't have to worry about a triple tank, triple support meta developing around her, because you can't even pick 3 tanks and 3 supports in the same game, because it doesn't work that way, right? And I think that is one of the reasons why it could work. And I think that it isn't the worst idea ever. And like I said, I still think there's some issues with it, and I see some problems mainly with the player base. But I think as a whole, the game would benefit more from role locking. I think role locking would help the game run better. I think it would be smoother in terms of playing um, in different game modes where you'd get more kind of just better team compositions in general. It'd be easier to get better team compositions, easier to get team compositions that work even if you don't really communicate well with your team. Maybe you have players who don't use the mic, or you just have players who don't listen. It's just easier to have a more solid team composition if everybody can only pick from a certain type of hero, right? And I think that that's really why role locking could work. The balancing and the fact that I think teams would just naturally be more balanced. And I also think that it would be a great thing because I think it opens up more metas, right? More different just compositions, right? Because when you look and you have someone like Brig, right? And you have someone like Reinhardt, maybe, and even like Wrecking Ball, right? Maybe what develops, right, is, okay, well, we need to rush this point, right? So maybe you develop kind of a, air quotes, GOATs composition. And I'm not saying this is a good composition, of course, what I'm going to say, but maybe you have kind of a team rush composition where you rush the payload, you get up close and you fight like that, and that way Brig is more successful because she can get the healing that she needs through being up close on the point. So maybe you have Lucio to speed boost the team with Brig as a secondary healer. Then maybe you have Reinhardt as your shield tank. Maybe you run Wrecking Ball as another tank, someone who kind of likes to get up close. Diva also works. Diva works in every kind of composition. And then maybe you have your DPS. You gotta get up close. Maybe you have Reaper. Maybe you have Doomfist. Some kind of assortment of heroes who work together to get close, to rush the payload, and do quick damage, and then take a point. And that's the kind of things that you could see developing, is different compositions for different maps, better than what we see currently. Because currently it's just, okay, we're on a map, and our options are normal goats with Reinhardt and Diva and Zenyatta. Maybe we shake it up a little bit and run some Moira goats instead. We replace, Zenyatta with Moira. Maybe we replace Diva with Sombra. Or maybe we have to run Winston goats. We don't run Reinhardt, we run Winston. And that's usually about the decision that you make on every single map in pro play. And I think we would see more fun team compositions if there was role locking. So I think from a competitive standpoint, from a professional standpoint specifically, it's so much better to make the game more interesting, more fun to watch. My problem is in game, the player base, I can't imagine there would be a ton of popularity, and I think we see it in a lot of people right now, right? People, big YouTubers making videos on it, and they're talking about it, and they're giving their thoughts on it. Monte Cristo made a video on it. Stylosa had his interview with Jeff Kaplan where they talked about it. So clearly there are people who are popular that want it, but I don't think everybody wants it. And I think that it would actually be something that could very easily divide the community. Obviously, we saw that Overwatch used to be no limits. You could have 6 of any one hero in a comp game, and they changed that, obviously, so that you can only have 1. And they have done things to improve the game, of course. But I wonder if this is one of the things that would work well, or if it would fall flat. It's very hard to tell, I think, without doing something. Obviously, I know League of Legends has a role lock system, but I feel like it's just the roles, from my very limited knowledge of League of Legends, are somewhat more loose. They're not very rigid and defined like we see with, in Overwatch you have damage, tank, support. I feel like the roles in League are a little bit more loose. I might be wrong, of course, but they don't feel as as defined as they do in Overwatch from my experience. But that's just my thoughts. I'd love to hear what you have to say in the comments down below. What you think about a role lock, a role queue, anything like that. I'd love to hear it. But thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing. And I'll see you all next time.